Well, true pioneers and creative visionaries are a rare and dying breed in our iron game these days, and few people can distinguish themselves as an insider, observer, participant, and documentarian like our guest today can. It's a tremendous honor to welcome bodybuilding legend Brian Moss with us here today. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys.
And Jamie, thank you very much again for organizing this, mate. How are you today?
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to talk to Brian and kind of shed some light on what bodybuilding used to be.
I'm so excited about this particular interview that I'm really nervous. Like usually I'm nervous having Jamie on anyway, but having both you and Brian on, I'm extra special nervous. So just bear with me any stumbles. And anybody watching, make sure you throw your questions and comments in as well. We'll get to any questions and Brian will be happy to answer them. But just before we kick off, Brian, for those that may be new to the iron game or have never heard of your story before, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Wow.
Where do you start?
Be a little more precise, please.
Well, actually, so here's a question that I had. So you are a former bodybuilder. You were the owner of a gym owner, or you were the owner of a very, very popular gym in New York City. One might even call it a mecca. You were a very popular ambassador for the sport of bodybuilding. You were a celebrity in the world of bodybuilding, dating another celebrity. You then transitioned into photography. You do custom motorcycles. So you've done a little of everything. You are a true Renaissance man. But if I were to sum you up in one word, like in one sentence, obviously one word wouldn't do it. But if I were to call you one thing, what would I call you?
God, wow. What would you call me? I don't know that I can be summed up in one word. I mean,
oh, not one word, one sentence. What, like if I was going to, like, are you a true Renaissance man? Are you comfortable with that? Or
no, I think I'm just sort of a free thinker. You know, I'm not locked into anything. I have a very particular view on the world, and that you can see whether it was the gym or my photography, or in fact, the reason why I think my work as a photographer has resonated with people is because very often in the industry, photographers were outsiders, you know, with the exception of like a John Balick who trained. They're outsiders, especially later, like in the 90s and the 2000s. But I was an insider. Like I grew up in the culture, you know, opening Better Bodies in 1982, which was very early. So I was really in the middle of it, so to speak. And in particular, you know, the birth of women's bodybuilding. And I was a gym rat. I mean, I still love nothing more than an old-fashioned gym, like the way my Better Bodies was. And so when I transitioned and found a camera,
can I just interrupt you 1 sec and just say, when you can you just tell everybody, because a lot of people don't know, they don't know what gyms were like before the internet. So can you just give them an idea when you say an old school gym, what is that?
Well, you know, for people today, it's probably really boring. I mean, I had an interesting experience. I had a woman that was smitten with, she had seen some pictures of me and Gladys at the old gym that still has my pictures up on the wall. And she was just fascinated by 80s culture. And she was, you know, like, well, what were your workouts like? And I thought for a moment and I sort of remember what it was. And then I thought, well, does she really want me to say, okay, you know, we did a bench press and we did this. And I have that information. I mean, I actually have my little workout journal right
Oh,
here.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, I know we spoke about this.
Hell yes.
So 1981, 82. But as I was thinking about like what were our workouts like, I thought maybe the best way to phrase it was just think about the equipment that we had. Get yourself a magazine from 1979 or 1980 and look at the equipment ads. We had nothing, but we had everything. You know, my equipment on a hot August day, summer of 82, we rented a box truck in Manhattan and we drove down to Matty Frigno's in Brooklyn at $10,000 to buy all the equipment I was going to need to open up Better Bodies, which is mind-blowing.
Wait, so this is the equipment that Lou Ferrigno is training on in pumping iron and shit like that, right?
Well, I don't know. He was training in his basement, I think. I don't know if his father was making equipment at that time. Probably not.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Matty Frigno, they opened up a gym, I think it was McDonald Avenue in Brooklyn, and he made equipment. You know, that when you see Lou and Company,
okay. I didn't know that. That's cool.
His wood paneled basement. I'm guessing that was his basement. It's wood paneling, for God's sakes. So
yeah.
that's usually the basement. And so we drove down there, and all of my equipment came from Matty Frigno, including the 2x2 rubber puzzle tiles. And I think, you know, when we started having the conversation about me doing this, I kind of tallied up the equipment, because I can remember it was only 4,000 square foot gym. I probably had 20 pieces of equipment, like, you know, flat bench, incline bench, pull down, dumbbells, hack squat, power rack, seated calf, standing calf. I didn't even have proper cables. I had like remember Marcy equipment? I always thought it was kind of like all equipment, but they've been around a long time. It was sort of like a Marcy station, and it had an adjustable high-low pulley. And that was like, you know, our pulley setup. And that's all we had.
But I mean, you had to have like either a Universal or a Marcy trainer back in those days, right? Like every gym had to have some kind of Universal gym.
Yeah, we didn't have the space for Universal in New York City. That's the other thing. When you own a gym in New York City and you're paying New York City rent, I love Universals. I mean, the first time I touched a weight when I was in high school, it was a Universal. And many of us got started on your Universal pieces. And truth be told, if I were to open up a gym tomorrow, I would put a Universal multi-station right in the middle of that gym. I mean, it's just a great piece of equipment, because you can do many things. I mean, you've seen pictures of Mike Menser standing on, I think, like, you know, a bench doing shrugs off of the bench press. You know, I mean, you got creative. You know, with lat pull downs, I mean, how many of us had our training partners hold our traps down?
Yep.
Because there wasn't a single station lat pull down. It was a station, and you got on your knees, right? So that's what I told her. I said, we just had so little. And, you know, I think about that, and I think about the joy that we had and the bodies that were built. And obviously nobody sort of illustrates that better than like the guys at the original Golds. I mean, they didn't have a shit ton of stuff, and they built obviously legendary bodies. So I think about those moments like, wow, we just really didn't have a lot, but we didn't know we didn't have a lot because it's all anybody had. And sometimes I laugh now when I see on my social media feed about some of these crazy pieces of equipment. I mean, crazy. Like, I'm sure they feel good, but I'm like, holy cow. And I don't even imagine what the costs are. I mean, one piece comes to mind. I think it was a hammer, and God knows I love hammer strength. I was the first person to bring hammer to New York City in '91. Met Gary Jones, still in touch with him, so I love hammer, even though he sold it. And there's some crazy leg press that's like 3 stories high.
Oh, that thing, I hate that fucking machine. I knocked myself out with that machine once. I fell into it.
But the footprint on that one piece, like, I don't understand.
Huge.
You would really, it's huge. You would need like a big box gym to even think about that. And being brought up in a little gym, I could never think that way. It just seems like I'm wasting space, you know, almost like a child of the Depression. Like, you learn a certain way and then that's all you know. So yeah, it was just a really basic, simple gym. And I digress. What was your question?
So we were going from there, and then you were talking about transitioning into photography, because you were talking about the old school gym.
Right. Oh, right. So it's because I'm a child of old school. When I picked up a camera and started shooting, I didn't initially start shooting in the gym. I started shooting a couple of the fitness competitors, like Sharon Bernot, Erica Kern, because I had showed them the work that I had been doing. I had photographed, I guess it was, well, I should back up. The reason why I even had a camera was in '95, I took a road trip, solo road trip on Route 66, because I love Americana, I love Main Street America, and I wanted to see Main Street gyms, small gyms. And so I flew to Chicago, rented a car, and I drove all the way to Santa Monica. But I thought, well, if I'm going to do that trip, maybe I could pitch the idea to Bob Kennedy about the gyms of Route 66. I thought it was a really cool idea. And so he
that is a great idea.
Yeah. So he thought it was a great idea too. And I went out and bought basically a point and shoot camera. And then actually my first stop was Kim and Chad, who owned, or no, they managed a Gold's Gym, I think, in Illinois. And
Kim Chizevsky?
Yeah.
Okay. And Chad Nichols, right?
Chad Nichols, yes.
Okay.
And she then obviously went on to win, many Olympias. But I think that was my first official sort of like gym of Route 66 stop. And that's kind of what I did. I hopscotched along and I found great gyms. And but that's what got a camera in my hand. And I sort of, I took my own pictures and I enjoyed that. Then when I came back, I did a few shoots with some fit women of better bodies, but they weren't workout stuff. Like I call them sort of like dirty style in terms of they were black and white. I'm not a fan of like shiny, happy people photography. And there's a really cool place in New York City called the Chelsea Hotel, Hotel 17. These really great rooms, crazy wallpaper, looks as though it had been untouched since like the 80s. And so I did my first sessions in there. I showed those pictures to like Sharon and Erica, and they're like, whoa, that looks really cool, because they're so used to being shot like Muscle and Fitness style, shiny, happy people, LA. And so I did a few shoots with them. And then I took that small body of work and I showed it to Jim Chadha, who was the creative director of Muscle and Fitness, who I knew because of Gladys. Gladys was out of the scene at this point, but of course I knew everybody from Muscle and Fitness, from Joe on down. And Jim said, oh, this is really cool. Like, why don't you do a shoot? And so he said, we're going to fly you to the Arnold's Classic. And I'm trying to think of when the shoot was. I think it was 98 was the Arnold's Classic. And he said, I love what you're doing in these hotel rooms. Do it at the DoubleTree. I was like, cool. And so I went there, just myself, no assistant, one light, one point and shoot camera. I lined up as many shoots as I could. I think I must have done like 10 shoots in like 48 hours. It was crazy. It's crazy when I think back how hard I was hustling back then. Like today, like I can barely do like one thing in a day. Like anyway, so I shot it, and it was black and white, which was kind of radical for Muscle and Fitness. I don't know that there was much black and white ever in Muscle and Fitness. And it was called Knock on Any Door. And once Joe saw the pictures, they literally offered me a contract. And I flew out there.
And every man in America fell in love with Sharon Bruneau at the same time. Yeah. Oh my, just legs buckling online at the grocery store. Like, yeah. Whoo, she was so gorgeous in those pictures.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so I signed a contract, and I was under contract to them, I think 5 or 6 years, until basically they sold it to Peckerhead. And once it's owned by like bean counters, you're fucked, And
who's Peckerhead? Just out of curiosity.
David Pecker, the guy the guy that owned, bought it basically. Same guy that owned Inquirer. So he bought it from the Weiders, and I was under contract. They tried to terminate everybody's contract, and luckily the guy, Vince Scalisi, who was like my big boss there, kind of like went to bat for me and said, look, he's under contract. We're not going to renew him, but at least you gotta, why have a contract if you could just end a contract?
Right.
And so Vince did the right thing. That was my last year with them, and that was it. But that's actually where the people from Universal and Animal Pack saw my name in those shoots, the crazy shoots, the concept shoots, and so on. And so, yeah, that's how it happened. But speaking about Animal, the reason why all those things look the way they do is because I've been informed by the early gym culture of the 80s. It's what I know. I understand the details. I'm not an outsider thinking like, oh, what would look good? Like, I know what looks good. Like, you could talk to any of the guys and they know what looks good. That's the thing when you're shooting bodybuilders. They absolutely know. And you need to pay attention to that, because they need to be on board. They need to know that they're looking really good in the shoots. And like, for instance, like I will never shoot cable crossovers because you just look like shit hung out like that. It's really hard to look good. Maybe if you're here with, with the movement, flexed, contracted, but, so just little things like that.
Yeah, I think Roland Sherlock used to like that move in Flex magazine. He would do picture because he had that weird physique. So I think he could only really flex his pecs if he was doing cable crossovers.
Yeah, but not in this position.
No.
Yeah, it's down here. Oh yeah, in that position, it's almost like a crab, like almost muscular. So it's there, it's okay.
Yeah, I remember even in Pumping Iron when Arnold was shot doing the cable crossovers, it was from a very close up and low angle. So yeah, you're definitely right about that. But just in regards to the photographers that you were talking about when you were coming up, because a lot of those guys had their own level of celebrity and had interesting stories as much as some of the guys that they were taking pictures of. Had guys like Russ Warner, Artie Zally, Alex Ardenti, Bill Dobbins, Chris Lund, Per Bernal, David Paul. But who are some of the physique photographers whose work that especially influenced maybe your own work or you really liked or admired?
Oh, I mean, clearly Artie Zeller, John Balick. I mean, those guys were just monsters. And George Butler, I mean, to his credit, he was an outsider, but holy shit, did he have great instincts. I'm always blown away by his photography, and not just on the men's side. When they did the revision of Pumping Iron, the book, and he covered the Miss Olympia, I think it was 81. He's just, for an outsider, I'm always blown away by his work. He just understood. He saw, and he seemed to. I never watched him shoot, but he seemed like, to be a good photographer, you almost have to, on the fly, I should say, not a setup shoot, what we would call like reportage, where you can't tell a bodybuilder backstage, oh, wait, hold that. Like, there's a difference between taking pictures and making pictures. If you're shooting backstage, I call that taking a photograph, because you're only taking what they're giving you. Making a photograph is when I do, Mike Matarazzo as a killer clown. That whole thing is made. So taking photographs. George Butler just amazes me. So I love those guys for sure. They're probably my favorites.
If I could just go back to the story of your gym, because it's described in a number of different ways, depending on who's writing about it. Some people called it the Studio 54 of bodybuilding. Another text said that it was like it was a touchstone for many people for many reasons. It was the right gym at the right time for the right group of people. Another publication said it was not only a place where muscle fantasies came true, but where they were actually born. So you must have had anybody and everybody that was somebody in that back in the day come through that gym. But one of the most recent books that was released, I think it might have done an interview on you. It was saying that, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought there. You were always interested in the outliers and the underground people who took advantage of your day passes, because you offered something that like a lot of the gyms didn't back in the day, which was this accessibility, but also transience, which made Better Bodies a more interesting place rather than these clubs that locked you into membership contracts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was a really big part of it in terms of a broad cross-section of people, to your point. People are scared of contracts. And remember, I was trying to get people, in particular on the women's side. Remember, there was no hardcore place for a woman to train. Better Bodies.
How about George Snyder's back in the day? Was that a place accessible to women? George Snyder?
Yes. Yeah. Olympus Gym was, but George had his own particular feeling about women and muscle. He had issues with kind of too much muscle, as it were. I never had issue. I couldn't care less how much muscle a man or a woman has. And back in those days, women were fighting that fight. And so, no, that wasn't.
They had only just gotten a fucking be able to have a bank account. So
yeah, right.
They were fighting a lot of fronts.
That's right, on many fronts. And so I just, wanted it to be an incredibly democratic space. Everybody, I've always maintained, in your gym shorts and your tank top, everybody's equal. And the only thing that might make a gym not democratic would be charging too much, because then all of a sudden you don't have a broad cross section. You know, I would say inexpensive. I think back then, you know, I had specials $199 for the year. And then to your point about dailies, we call them dailies or walk-ins. I allowed them, I welcomed them. And my philosophy was I would charge whatever the movie theaters were charging for a movie. Because I felt if you could spend $6 for 2 hours to see a movie, then why couldn't you spend $6 to better your body, so to speak? And I did that till I sold, you know, I started at $5. Basically, that tells you how long ago. In '82, a movie was $5. And then if it went up $1, usually movies seem to go up $1 at a time in New York. And I don't remember where I topped out at, but nothing freaky, nothing crazy. And I had people that were walk-in members for years, like, you know, just like a member. And so, yeah, that was a fun part of it. And also the neighborhood I was in was for the outliers and the rebels. It wasn't particularly residential. It was very industrial. There were some nightclubs down there and lofts down there, artist-style lofts. And very often artists lived in those lofts illegally because they were commercial spaces. So I think that's why it was like the right gym in the right place at the right time, early 80s, which was a magical time in New York for so many things: music, hip hop, graffiti, you name it, art, everything. And man, they all came together in better bodies, and it was just fucking magic.
Oh,
so
speaking of that,
names.
if I can interrupt, the New York City thing at that time. So this was around the time that out in Vernon, New Jersey, there started to be Donald Trump started trying to make a mecca in the East Coast, and they built the most dangerous water park in the world in Action Park, and the East Coast Playboy Mansion. Which, if memory serves, did you not go to the East Coast Playboy Mansion? Did I not see a picture of you there?
No,
because I know I saw some New York bodybuilders there. No? Oh, okay.
There was a Playboy Club in Vernon, New Jersey.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. The Playboy Club in New York, in
yes,
New Jersey.
Playboy Club. That's not a mansion. Yes.
Okay.
A friend of mine was actually a lifeguard there, so periodically we would kind of go up there, and you know, I took Gladys up there. A couple of, you know, my training partner. Yeah, there are some pictures of us, I think, in the pool there and in the gym there. Yeah, but that was Vernon, New Jersey. Yeah.
So what was that like? Because so you are in so many different circles now. Like you're like Andy Warhol, basically, because wasn't he in the bodybuilding circle as well somehow, like tangentially? But like you're just everywhere. Like you're all over the place. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, he photographed some fit people, but you know, Mapplethorpe also photographed really fit people and photographed bodybuilders. I mean, not just Lisa Lyon, but locally he photographed Lydia Cheng, which was a friend of ours and Gladys's. I'm actually really surprised that he never made his way to Better Bodies and Gladys, because Gladys, this would have been like beyond for him to shoot, just beyond, but it just never happened. I was confused about that. I wonder why, but no, he was obviously, you know, fascinated by women's bodies and muscle on women's bodies, as is self-evident in the Lisa Lyon work. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The New York scene seems such like a interesting counter reflection of what was happening in, you know, the West Coast with the gold scene, because there were so many interesting characters out there, like with regards to Tom Minicello, Steve McCallick, Dan Laurie, and Lou Ferrigno. Did you come across all these people in your time, obviously in the early 80s, or?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't interact too much with gym owners like Tom. I would say Bobby Fuchs probably most, because Bobby Fuchs, a natural physique, we literally opened up at about the same time. And we were in different neighborhoods. So at least back then, gyms sort of had neighborhoods. Some people would travel around. But if somebody opened up a gym in another neighborhood, you weren't really competing with them. So I would say Bobby probably was the most. And then after that, many of the future gym owners in New York were my ex-members. David Barton was a member. John Peretti was a member. Madison Avenue Muscle. Not Frank McGrath. I can't remember his first name, McGrath, opened up another gym. So all these guys became gym owners. And now Vinny Consalvo, who owns Mid City now, who's now, I think he just had like his 30-something 40th anniversary, which is mind-blowing. I commented on a thread on social media telling him, I don't think people realize how fucking amazing that is to be able to stay in business in a privately owned small gym in Manhattan. It's not like any other place in the world, but he was a member, to my point. So it's sort of like I spawned all these kind of great gym owners in New York City. But in the very beginning, there were just very few. There were a couple of men's gyms, and then me and Bobby opened up.
So were you one of the first co-ed gyms in New York City?
Well, I would say hardcore co-ed. There were health clubs, which are always co-ed. Bobby was co-ed, but I sort of marketed and geared myself towards welcoming women. I mean, you can see, you know, my first flyer, it's Gladys flexing her muscle, saying Manhattan's first serious bodybuilding gym for women as well as men. Because I just felt there was a need. I mean, you know, women train in health clubs all day long, but at that point, they wanted more. You know, remember, that's the early 80s, that's the Jane Fonda era, that's, you know, leg warmers, that's chrome dumbbells, that's kind of like where women were sort of sent. And I just sort of felt like, why can't it be a hardcore gym that allows women? And that's all it was. It really wasn't anything magical. It wasn't, other than realizing there was a need. And in terms of how women were dealt with, they were not seeking to be treated differently. That's the thing. They just wanted to be treated equally. And that's all it was. And we felt like, us in any gym or anybody, come in, but just be serious. Just train hard, be serious. And, you know, you're down with us. And you could work in with anybody. We'll strip down 315, no problem. If you only need, you know, whatever, 25s on the bar. We're just,
that's awesome.
That's the culture.
That's the vibe.
Yeah.
And speaking of equal treatment, obviously when pumping iron first came out, it gave bodybuilding a massive boost and a cultural currency at the time. But a few years later, when Butler tried the same thing with the women with pumping iron too, it didn't have the same resonance, and it actually attracted a lot of criticism, especially even in the Pumping Iron 2 women's book. What were your thoughts on the actual documentary of Pumping Iron 2, and why do you think it failed, if I could use that word?
Well, first of all, it's not a documentary. It's a docudrama. And George Butler has even said that much. I've been told by Wayne D'Amelia that there was some moment where George was supposed to, I don't know, get some award, a documentary award, and he said himself, no, it's not. So many of the scenes, if not all, are set up. It's closer to what I would consider like reality TV. You know how they bring in real people with real stories, but then they set them up in these things because they know there's going to be clashes. And so it's not a documentary. I don't think the women were happy with it. I mean, the way that Rachel was portrayed, Bev, I mean, nobody was portrayed particularly well, it seems. The scene where Oscar State, who was, you know, a judge, IPB judge forever, they show him like nodding off, but apparently that wasn't during judging, but yet it was cut into a contest. So it was just, you know, it was just sort of, it was entertainment basically is all it was. And I think
Butler, who was so supportive of the men's side of bodybuilding and wanted to advance, you know, its public profile, why do you think that he edited or presented female bodybuilding in that, you know, counter-helpful way?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's not anti-muscle. It wasn't that. I mean, he was pro-muscle on women, but I think, and again, this is just me speculating because I never had a conversation with him about it, but you know, because it's a movie and you're seeking drama, that you're looking for a story and you're basically creating the story. And that was kind of Bev versus the world. And interestingly enough, it was supposed to be Kay Baxter. Kay Baxter was the first choice, but then Wayne D'Amelia, or maybe it wasn't Wayne. No, I think it was Bev's coach. introduced Bev to George, and as soon as George saw Bev, they like immediately booked a flight and flew to Australia. Well, maybe you heard that, being in Australia, and spent time, and then it became Bev, and the rest, as they say, is history. So, I don't really know. I don't know. And
wait, wasn't that like 1982 though?
Well, the contest was 83. The Caesar's
okay.
Cup was 83.
So Bev was barely even a bodybuilder at that point, right? Because it was 1982. The Women's Pro World, or the WTPW magazine, had her ranked like 17th in the world as a bodybuilder, even though she wasn't a bodybuilder.
Right, but she was a power lifter, and she actually guest posed at the 80 Olympia as a bodybuilder. So
I didn't know that. That's something I did not know. That's one more bit of freakishness to the 1980 Olympia. Jesus Christ. That was a fucking circus.
She wasn't a bodybuilder, but she put on, you'll see her in bikinis, and she trained. She did a lot in bikini tops. I've actually spoken to her about it. But she was obviously a world-class power lifter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think she said yes to pumping iron too, because the challenge. Like a lot of these, they love the challenge. Like, okay, I'm going to do that. And she said yes. So.
Yeah, it just seemed when I was reading the book of Pumping Iron 2, the women, there were so many of the big prominent names back then that were so openly against the concept of female bodybuilding. You had Arnold, who was quoted in the book as saying that he didn't think anything of it at all. You had Wayne DeMille, who was supposed to be the promoter of the bodybuilders, for so many decades, saying completely derogative and derisive things about female bodybuilding. And also guys like Rick Wayne as well, who said that women simply were never meant to look like that. And these are all direct quotes from the book. It just seems that females bodybuilding, as much as it was supposed to be about liberation, was barely even given a chance. And they said it always came down to the commercial aspect that women's bodybuilding couldn't sell or wouldn't sell, they said. But it also wasn't given a chance, it seems. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's also the time and the culture. It was very, bodybuilding and the whole sport was very, and still is, very patriarchal and very much kind of controlled by men. It just was. And that's on the publishing side, and that's also obviously on the contest side. And so, they were up against it. There's no doubt about it. And I think many of them, because this isn't like the Olympics. This is for profit. So everybody, like when you hear somebody say something, you have to understand what's the motivation, consider the source. Why, what they have skin in the game, yes. What's their skin in the game? A promoter, what do they need? Asses in the seats. So if the promoter feels like that's not going to bring people in the show, then he or she has every right to say no. That makes sense, right? The same with magazines. If you argue, there needs to be this woman on a cover, but the publisher feels like I'm not going to sell. So he maybe mistakenly makes the mistake of saying no. So I don't find fault with that, because they're in it for the money, like all of us to some degree are, right? I had a gym, I needed to pay rent. So I think you always have to consider the source when people are saying that, and the time. And I think that's why they probably said what they said. But the women didn't have a voice. That's the thing. Like, there they were, alone, trying to do this great thing, not for the world. That's the thing. It wasn't like a mass movement. Like, women didn't all huddle and say, hey, we're going to start to train. Just everyone individually realized, for whatever reason, they were seeking strength. Not even to be a bodybuilder, because early on, there wasn't a bodybuilder. There wasn't really an archetype, right? Like all of us, you'd see Arnold. Oh, you want to look like Arnold. Well, what did an early woman look at? She's seeking strength, perhaps. So they didn't have a voice. And, that sucks, because it was a different world. Today, everybody has a voice. That's a blessing and a curse, by the way. So if you're a woman today, you do have a voice, because now everything is broadcast. Again, for better or for worse. But back then, no.
Yeah, so female bodybuilding was on the cusp of becoming extinct there for a while, especially during the reign of after the Coreys, after the Linda Murrays. Once Kim Shavetsky took the mantle, there was no more women on the covers. But Jake Wood, do you think that he's done a better job of promoting women's bodybuilding, you know, getting it back into the shows and giving that a little bit more promotional dollar?
Well, yeah, he's supporting it for sure. He believes in it for sure. But I don't know what attendance is like, to my point that this is, you know, it's for profit. I'm happy that the women have a place to do whatever they want to do, because I just believe people they should be able to do whatever they want and look however they want, and the chips fall where they may. Does that mean they win a show? Maybe not. Maybe they do. You know, I always tell people when they're competing, it's best to be as pure about it as you can. Meaning, some people love the process of competing. They love the preparation. But it's good not to fall in love with the trophy. Like, I like the people that love the process, because if they've given it their best and they finished fourth, then it was great. It was great. But if they're sort of like going after the card and they're going to be this and they're going to be that, it's like, man, there's not a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. And it's obviously a high price to pay for some people. So, you know, I like the people that just love training. They love the gym. They even like dieting. They love posing. They love being up on stage. You know, that's pretty pure, I feel. And you can't go wrong with that, even if you lose. So.
And, you know, to that point, loving posing is something that bodybuilders do not do anymore. They don't love posing. They don't even like posing, nor do they practice posing. And I have come to the realization posing is a great deal of the reason why a person would look good standing on stage, is practicing posing. And if you don't, right? Am I wrong?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, there's good posers and there's not good posers. Not everybody is a born poser. Obviously, there's classic people, you know, like Corny and so on, who pose beautifully. I mean, look back at the early days of posing. I mean, the guys were basically look like lumps on stage. They're just sort of hitting, like they didn't even have transitions, basically just, you know, pose. But that's okay. That's what everybody was doing. And I actually think it's women, perhaps, that introduced them to this idea of transitions. Because if you look at early women's posing, they did transition from pose to pose. Sometimes too much. I can remember, I forgot what I was reading. It was an early magazine about like the guidelines for female bodybuilding. And they actually stated, you know, have transitions, but be sure to hold your pose long enough to know that it's a bodybuilding pose. And I thought that was interesting.
No. The hell was that? Sorry, I don't even know what the hell that was.
No, that's fine. No, I totally agree as well. I was also sort of thinking, like, just getting back to your photography, Brian, you know, when I look at today, we've got this disposable nature due to the mass production of imagery, you know, so everyone's a consumer and everyone's a producer, you know, thanks to digital photography, you know, but it seems like the importance of the imagery and the iconography related to each era has been lost. You know, what's basically the future of bodybuilding photography now that like AI is even coming into the scene, where we're not going to be able to tell the difference of what's real anymore or what's not real, because we'll be able to, you know, recreate photography just with text-based prompts. And I don't know, where do you see bodybuilding imagery going in the future?
Bleak.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any future, because to your point, and you know, AI and all that, you can't call that photography anymore. They're illustrations. It's not photography. Photography, at least for me, is you pick up a camera and you take a photograph. But yeah, I mean, I am so blessed that I sort of was involved when I got involved in the gym business. And I started, you know, I picked up a camera in the days of film, analog, transitioned, you know, to digital. But now with AI and all this madness, yeah, I just think it's bleak, because the entire sport it's so fragmented now because of social media. Because if you go backwards and you think about what it was like when we were young, it was the magazines. That's all we had. That was it. And maybe you would see, NBC covered men's bodybuilding nationally, CBS too, I think. So you'd see it on TV. But, we lived for the magazines, and we ripped out the pictures, we put them on our walls, we poured over the workouts, you name it. And I guess you could say maybe the publishers were sort of gatekeepers, because, of course, they're only allowing you to see what they think you should see. But maybe that wasn't so bad, because now everything is allowed, and it's just overload, sensory overload. Disposable is a word that I use, that you used. Photography now is disposable, throwaway. And so where are the days of me telling Jim Chadha, my creative director, I have this idea for a shoot, and I want to go here and do this, and I need a stylist. And I will say that, Joe Weider, I got budgets to do these things, which is crazy. I mean, for editorial, I did some crazy shoots with a lot of people in some really weird places, and they cost thousands of dollars, thousands. And I would pitch it to Jim Chadha, and I don't even know if he pitched it to Joe. He just kind of believed in me. And that's how you ended up with, Milos as Elvis and, Mike as the killer clown. Those crazy amount of production, a lot of money. And I got paid well too, because historically, when you're an editorial photographer, you don't get paid anything. Because in fashion magazines, editorial photographers, it's almost free. You want to do it because you want the credit line in the gutter of the magazine. It's advertising where those people made their money. But somehow I was just able to negotiate really fair money for editorial. And, truth be told, those shoots are over 20 years old now, and they still withstand the test of time. I mean, Milo still posts his Elvis pictures. What other feature in muscle and fitness do people remember from 20 years ago? They were pretty inane usually, whatever, shiny happy people running on a beach, that sort of stuff. And I just kind of want to turn that inside out. But to your point, somebody was paying for that. And so now I'm saying, who's going to pay for that today?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. We used to print out these pictures or put them on our wall, and they'll be forever enduring. We'll always look back at these old pictures from yourself and the other photographers with that lost sense of nostalgia. And I think that's a large reason of why the mystique of today's bodybuilders has been lost, and you'll never be able to be recaptured again. Because I know that when I'm making the thumbnails for
that reminds me. Now I remember, because with the yelling downstairs, I'd completely forgotten what I was asking. The posing practice that people don't do now. They practiced poses to the point where they even practiced their relaxed poses, like Serge Nubret. We think of him as looking like a Greek god at all times because he practiced looking amazing. He practiced casual flexing probably more than anybody else has ever practiced it. Yeah. But that drives in definition, right? These bodybuilders now, I think, lack the detail of the old school because they don't practice posing like you guys did. Do you think that might be the case?
Yeah, I mean, not me. I never stepped on stage like that, but obviously I was privy to it and saw it. I mean, I can remember Gladys. We had, a dancer. We rented space. I mean, she was a great poser. I think she's a really underappreciated poser. Really a fantastic poser. Yeah, and I can't speak to the guys today because I don't feel like I'm in the scene anymore. Really, I'm kind of on the outside looking in. I see what fans see, social media and so on. So I don't know, but Serge Nubret, those people, wow, just amazing. Oh, and Denny, also a really good photographer, some really great stuff. I mean, Denny was shooting in Vince's. He was there at the very beginning. I like Denny. Sorry.
Denny who?
Well, he went by Denny, Muscle Training Illustrated. He was the editor of MTI. His name is Denny Walters. But he DENI. Gotcha. Yeah. I always thought his name was Deanie because I just read it. DENIE. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, cool.
Some really beautiful shots. He had done shots for Arthur Jones. He'd done shots for Lori. yeah, he's I think an underappreciated guy as well.
Brian, I was just wondering if I could bring up some of my few favorite pics of yours and whether you could give us any of the backstory, your thoughts, or even like some production narrative behind each one. Doesn't have to be too in depth, but maybe just a few thoughts. Obviously, this one here is one of your most iconic. Any stories?
That is
or
a great picture.
Yeah. So the story here, the assignment was I was to shoot Ernie Taylor from the UK. He was competing at the Night of Champs. And my assignment was, you know, that he was a tourist, you know, a bodybuilder tourist, and, you know, seeing the sights of Manhattan. So I thought, okay, well, if he's a tourist, then I'm going to, my narrative was he competes in the Night of Champions and he walks out the backstage door in his trunks and his bag and his flip-flops and gets in a taxi and he sees New York. That was the framework for all of this. That was the sort of madness of the shoot. And he was down for it, which I was happy that he was cool with it. And what I had done, like with all my shoots, you know, pre-scout locations, and I knew exactly what those spots were. It was World Trade Center, Empire State Building, Central Park, Brooklyn Bridge, you know, all classic places where bodybuilders or where tourists would go. And this shot was actually not planned and almost accidental. And it just speaks to you as a photographer, or maybe even in life. It's always good to have a really good plan, but then it's also really good to be able to change your plan. Because what happened here is that we were in the RV, you know, we had like a 40-foot RV where the crew goes in and your equipment, and it takes you from location to location. And we were headed down Fifth Avenue to a spot that I had scouted to shoot the Empire State Building. It was like east of Fifth Avenue, and it's apparently the only place where you could photograph the entire Empire State Building from top to bottom. I thought that was cool. So we're headed down, but it's overcast and it's starting to rain. And the shot of the Empire State Building covered in clouds was not going to work. So I killed it. And I said, okay, let's just continue down Fifth Avenue. I'm going down Fifth Avenue, and then there's the iconic Flatiron Building, which is only a few blocks from Better Bodies. The Flatiron Building is a magnificent building. And I thought, oh, you know, no, pull over. We'll just use the Flatiron Building. And so this is 23rd Street, just above Fifth Avenue, looking north. And I mean, if you look at other pictures that I posted of the shoot, I have him crossing Fifth Avenue. I have him in front of the Flatiron. And here in this moment, and also I will add that because it was raining, I bought an umbrella from a street vendor. And that's how he ended up with an umbrella. And so a taxi was coming, and I said, Ernie, flag down that taxi. And he's from the UK, or maybe even all tourists. He just sort of stood there and just like had his arm out. And I'm like, no, you have to lean into it. Like you have to sort of be aggressive, like taxi. And you see, he leaned into it. And to me, the most important thing in this photograph is his right foot is in the air. And that little gap just makes everything fly. And that's because he leaned into it. And yeah, and they didn't stop. A lot of people ask, did the car stop? There were people though. And of course they're like, what the fuck? And there are pictures of him at Times Square with people all like Google-eyed. Yeah, we made a crowd, obviously, any place, you know, Ernie went. And
especially those Taylor famous triceps back then.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody knows him from his triceps. But yeah, I think that's probably my most iconic photograph because it transcends bodybuilding.
I bet you if you were to ask anybody who this person was without knowing the backstory behind this, they probably wouldn't be able to tell that it was Mike Matarazzo, the tragic Mike Matarazzo.
Yeah, but, I mean, you would only know. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say this one actually kind of speaks a lot to me, considering knowing the backstory of Mike's life and what actually happened.
Yeah, so it's possible people know. I don't remember exactly what made the final story in Muscle and Fitness. I can't remember. I haven't looked at the magazine in ages. But he was cast. I cast him as a clown twice. Obviously, there was a Crazy Coney Island shoot where he looks like a madman, and that was sort of like the Bozo style clown. And then this is like the Emmett Kelly style clown, which is a sad clown. So be careful about reading things into it, but it is sort of ironic. You're right, but he's meant to be a sad clown. That's what Emmett Kelly was. And so on that shoot, this was for Halloween. So he was a clown. Gunther Schlierkamp was Frankenstein. Mandy Blank was like a spooky prom queen. Tamaya Mayarova was Bride of Frankenstein. And Chris Cormier was a pimp vampire. And so
that's so Chris Cormier.
And what's great about him, he can tell you this story. Like I had these great like sharkskin pants for him and a cool hat, and he wore that home, like as only Chris would do. Like Chris is the best. And he was in my Coney Island shoot, and the reason why you see the same guys in my shoots is because these shoots weren't for everybody. I mean, they were hard work. I mean, think about Gunther Schlierkamp as Frankenstein. You don't even see his face. He's had an appliance put on for him that takes maybe 2 hours. Bodybuilding's about being seen, but they love the idea of sort of stepping out of their comfort zone, doing something different. I mean, Milos to this day says, I wish I would have shot more with you, because it was fun. It wasn't the same kind of shit like, okay, in the gym, flexing, workout stuff. This was fun, but it was really hard work. And so I knew if the guys would sort of take a bullet for me for the shoot, that's who I want to bring back. So that's why, you see Mike a couple of times, Chris a couple of times, Milos, he was also in the Coney Island shoot, and he was in the Elvis shoot. So, when I found those guys, I knew that they could go the distance. That's why you see those guys. And so,
something I kind of makes me most sad about bodybuilding photography these days is that it's so generic, it's so unoriginal, and no one ever does these concept shoots. And it's these concept shoots, like you said, shooting outside the gym in different contexts and different costumes, etc., that really bring the art alive for me.
Yeah.
Of course, like we've probably already spoken about
that picture's so dope.
One of my favorites. This was on a cover of a book I bought that was attributed to you. I think it was Atomic Dog by T.C. Luoma back in the early 90s. But I recognize that as the priest.
Yeah, but go back to Milos. I'll tell you let's go back to Elvis. So some people think that that's like fake abs, but that was the day after the Olympia. And that was shot. I had found this really cool, like dusty town about an hour outside of Vegas. And the funny thing here, and actually I just discovered this, that Elvis suit, it's not like you can just walk into a costume store and find an Elvis suit that's going to fit him. So I actually had it made. And to give you an idea about budget, that was $700.
Damn.
Now, that's a lot. Custom made though. Look at that thing. I still have it. And I lost it for a while. I mean, I didn't lose it. I didn't know where it was. And I've moved recently and I was like, oh my God, I found it. And he was spectacular. I mean, he was amazing. If you see all the other pictures, strumming guitars, he could kind of make his lip go up like Elvis. Yeah. I mean, he was just incredible. Everybody was incredible. And one of my favorite shots. And obviously he just killed it. He just killed it.
Lee Priest was very photogenic and popular subject of many artists back in the day. You captured him here in his early days as well, pre all the crazy tattoos.
Oh, I wish I would have shot Lee. I did not shoot Lee. This is Mike Matarazzo.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was Lee there. Sorry. I just had a look at the face. I thought I saw the tattoo there and I was like, oh, it's Lee, is it?
Yeah, no, he's got a bald appliance on. Like, I wanted like a comb over, a fucked up comb over. He's got really thick glasses. And that inflatable girl, I brought that from New York as a prop because I said that was his girlfriend. And I remember when we broke down and brought everything back to the hotel, I didn't deflate her. And I put her on one of those wheelie carts at, I'm sure it was Mandalay Bay, and sort of carted her to my room. But that's who she is.
These shoots sound like a lot of fun. Did you have some good times and see different sides of the bodybuilders, getting to know them more intimately in these types of shots?
Yeah, because you become kind of like a band of brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? You were in a tough environment, and here obviously it was hot as hell. It was a desert, and it was challenging. But yeah, I mean, I really love those guys, and God, I miss Mike. I mean, Mike was just a special guy, just a great guy. I miss him.
Yeah, so unfortunate. And so many more bodybuilders, both male and female, continue to pass away each week. There's always another small handful every week now, whereas before it was so rare, but now it's just part and parcel of the sport.
Yeah.
This was another interesting one to me because a lot of people might not know him. Richard Sandrak, the little pocket Hercules back in the day. He seems to be wearing like a crown of thorns or something in a couple of the pics that I saw of this one here.
Yeah, so what that is, this is probably, one of my finest shoots, and it never got published. I don't know why or what went down there. I think they might have gotten weirded out about Little Hercules. Don't know why, but it was this wild post-apocalyptic shoot. And on my Instagram, you can actually see, like, I foresaw Furioso. Like I crafted, this was 5 women that I cast and Richard. And he was the last man on Earth because of some virus, or I forgot what my story was, but it was something like that. He was the last man, male, I should say, on Earth, and supplements fed into it somehow. It's been so long, I haven't really thought about the story. That's why he's got supplements around him. And so these women were seeking him out, and that was kind of like a throne that I made for him out of an old chair. And I brought in the old magazines and all of the empty bottles of supplements. And I did.
He looks like Arnold. He looks like Arnold doing the Conan pose, saying the crush your enemies, drive them before you and hear the lamentations of the women. That particular. From Conan, the original. But I don't know. That was just my kind of take from it. Probably the supplements, if it's post-apocalyptic, it's the only food left that's.
Yeah, it had to do with food, that there wasn't food. No, he's just sort of hitting a shot. We weren't thinking about anything other than looking sort of regal. And the crown of thorns, I still have that as well. I made that. I mean, so much work went into this. I had a stylist that was just mind-blowing. If you see how the women were styled, it just blew me away what she was able to do. And this is literally in the middle of the desert. We rented an old mining town, literally rented like 1,000-acre like mining town, and had access to all these crazy sites. And we stayed in where the kind of the worker housing, as it were. And and it never got published, which, I mean, I published it on social media. That's all I could do because, man, we worked so hard on it.
That looks like a set picture from the movie The Bad Batch with Jason Momoa, where there were a bunch of bodybuilding cannibals in the desert. It was filmed in the there's a homeless encampment out in the desert I think it's called the Slab or something like that. And,
they're not homeless, but the Slab. Yeah.
There you go. But you totally envisioned that movie in one. You encapsulated the entire movie in one photograph. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Someone you just mentioned in the comments, how can we not talk about Gladys Portuguese? Well, this picture was part of the repertoire that I thought was a great shot of Gladys. Did you want to?
Yeah, sure. So, I love this photograph because, number one, it's clarity. I forgot who photographed it. There's actually a series of her working out and sort of me training her in a couple of these movements. But there you see it. That's a Ferrigno squat rack. Then you see kind of the clamps. I had somebody weld like a clamp holder to the right. And then you see the Ferrigno standing calf raise to the left. And I mean, what's there not to love about this photograph? Gladys looks amazing. She's wearing a unitard, which I think is the greatest thing in the world. I think they should bring back unitards, an old leather belt, and Adidas wrestling shoes, which was a thing for us. There was no such thing as Automix back then. But we found wrestling shoes as being really comfortable and great gym shoes, with kind of slouchy white socks. I mean, it's so amazingly beautiful. I'm going to guess this is probably like 83 or 84, maybe. Yeah, just a beautiful shot. And there you can see a Dan Laurie deep dish plate behind her.
And that's a standard barbell, which you never get to see anymore. That isn't that? That looks like an old school standard barbell.
We did have a few standards for just from, they weren't changeable. We sort of like torqued them down for some lighter weight. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
We didn't have a lot. Our welded barbells were also standard, as they usually are, like we had a rack welded.
Gotcha.
Did you have any questions for Brian about Gladys? Because I thought that you might have had some comments or questions regarding.
Well, we just have to talk about the fact that so you were a Playgirl cover boy, right?
Right.
Which is so you were basically you were in the contention for the arguably the hottest man within 10 miles of you at any given time, and you were dating a woman who people would argue was the hottest woman on the planet at the time in Gladys Portuguese. And this is just so badass. The only man on earth who was cool and good looking enough to take this woman from you was the #1 action star on planet Earth. That is incredible, man. I mean, if I could give you a hug for that, that is just the coolest fucking thing in the world. Like, we all adore, I don't know about you. Well, obviously you probably had different feelings on Van Damme, but like back in the day, that guy was the thing. Plus he's an artist like you, like he did ballet and did you know him at all?
No, I didn't. I met them once at LAX. I was going home from LA and I met them and, it was cordial, of course. There were no ill feelings. I mean, to him, to her, I mean, not at all. I mean, not at all. But it was pretty fresh, and it felt a little awkward, but it was cordial. But no, I don't know him at all. I can't say that anything beyond that. Like, hey, whatever. It was.
You do, however, know. Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought it was a nice seg because you worked out with fucking Mr. T. I mean, like so many of my childhood heroes, you've like been in their presence. So I'm just like, holy shit, you lifted with Mr. T. Like, what the fuck? This is so cool.
Yeah, but lifted in quotes. Those are photo ops,
Okay.
It's a photo op. And he was there because he was brought in by an artist. His name was Neil Adams. I didn't know how famous he was. He's since passed. But Neil Adams is one of the most iconic comic book artists ever. Yeah. Do you know the name?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he was like the Fantastic Four artist for a while, and he did.
Yeah, so he and his entire family trained at Better Bodies. And funny or not funny, we used to call them the Addams family, but we didn't know he was famous. They were just this nice family that came in, him, his wife, and 3 kids. And I don't remember the setup for this, but I guess he called me or said, hey, I want to bring Mr. T by the gym. So obviously he was doing something with Mr. T at the time. And so, it's a photo op. You see, I threw a Better Bodies tank top because I'm a shameless promoter. And
that's awesome.
For magazines, you need branding, you needed to get the logo out. And he was a kind sport about it. And he threw it on and, they snapped a few shots and that was it. So we weren't training. I mean, look at me. It's like that dumb trainer pose. Like when they say, oh, spot, like, what am I fucking doing there? When those pictures, you put your hands out, it's awkward at best. I mean, I'm behind them. It's just silly, but it's just photo op. That's all it was.
And you look like the 6th member of Ugly Kid Joe in that picture.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably one of your most successful and long-standing advertising campaigns that you've shot for over the years. A lot of people can resonate with these pictures of Frank McGrath. You've been with Animal Pack now for a very long time. This particular shot, I love it because he's obviously not in the gym. He's not flexing or anything, but did you want to give us a little bit of a story with this one?
Yeah, well, to give you a story about this, people need to understand the whole concept that this lives within. So I had the idea, I don't have the date in front of me, when I was first engaged by Animal Pack, which was 2001. Well, I guess it'd be 2001. In an early meeting with Animal Pack, when they said, we want to do this thing, hardcore, I had always wanted to do what I would call a serialized ad campaign. I thought it'd be really, because remember, we just had magazines. So we know that bodybuilding and competing, it's a process. When you see them on stage, it's just this 1 nanosecond with this insane body, and they don't own that body. They don't own that muscle. They have to give it back within hours. And that's how people see it. But they don't understand like the front end of that, all of the work that goes into what you know as prep. And so I wanted to do the entire journey of a bodybuilder, from starting prep, dieting, stage, aftermath. And they originally didn't like the idea. They said, no, we're not sure about that idea. And then I went on to shoot, you know, the shut up and squat, or shut up and train, I think they did, in 2001, which a lot of people know because that's the guy with the knit cap. Or shut the fuck up was the second iteration of it. This came after. This is 2004, because they finally said, okay, we want to do it. But I was bummed that they said no in the beginning, but then they came around. And so all this was me shooting that whole progression. And in order to do that, you need to show a bodybuilder where they live. Bodybuilders don't live in the gym, and they have homes. And the inspiration, I called it the animal apartment or animal house. And I rented, this was a mother-daughter sort of walkout apartment that my neighbor had, and it was empty, and I rented it. And I was able to prop it with what I thought. Remember, Frank wasn't Frank back then. Frank was the animal guy. People didn't even know Frank's name at that point. And that's what we wanted. We wanted this anonymity, so every young person could look at that and see themselves in them. Even a woman could see themselves in it, like what that process is, how hard that process is to get on stage. And so I rented this place and I propped it. My inspiration for this was Taxi Driver. I don't know if you know the apartment that he lived in, but that's what inspired me, like a bed, a TV, a mirror, a kitchen, and not much else. And then I created like this imaginary posing room, because I would imagine Frank is so obsessed with his condition. So I brought in a big mirror, put it in the living room, and then I tacked all these photographs around it, almost like a crazy mood board. Like, you know, this is what he's looking at. And so that was the setup. And this, of course, is what I witnessed through the 80s. All my friends were top pro bodybuilders. I knew their girlfriends. I knew their wives. I knew their fights. I knew what the arguments were. And so this was that. You know, I cast a girl that would be his girlfriend, not a bodybuilder. And I wanted to show conflict, because that's pretty common, you know, amongst couples, whether it's maybe a female bodybuilder and a non-bodybuilding guy. But here, classically, the bodybuilding male, non-bodybuilding woman, and there was conflict. And, you know, I didn't give them a script as to what it was. I just sort of gave them some emotional direction. And, you know, people have done some crazy things and made some memorable memes out of this, like trying to configure like what they're saying or what it's about. But that's just people having fun with it and maybe projecting their own stuff. I didn't have that. I didn't say, Frank, look pissed. I just was like, hey, you know, you're having a little bit of a conflict. And you can see her pose, hand on hips. You know, these are like markers for like conflict. And that's his gym bag, his gallon of water. And then if you know the series, I also had chicken and rice and Tupperware, which, you know, is still a thing with bodybuilders, I'm imagining, although now they get their food delivered as well as special food services. Back in the day, and maybe today still people prep.
That's when I saw this one back in the day, I was kind of envisioning Marlon Brando in Streetcar Named Desire with Stella.
That's what I thought it was too.
De Niro with not Taxi Driver, a Raging Bull, perhaps. But I noticed that there was a tonal shift in bodybuilding photography when Dorian came along, because before Dorian, it was very kind of much happy-go-lucky by the beach, you know, contrived with the sprayed-on ersatz sweat. But when Dorian came, it became gritty, hardcore, and industrial, blue collar. Do you find that there was that shift as well in tone in the mid-90s?
Well, but I think that's purely because of Kevin Horton's work. Kevin is the one that photographed him in the temple. because once you took Dorian out of there and you see what they did to him in Weider Hills, they put him in some awkward fucking things, man. Like positions, and he's not comfortable in that, man. He's comfortable like in the temple, and that's why Kevin's work is beautiful. Like that series, I call it the Black Sock series, like just beautiful. And so, yeah, I kind of agree, but that's only as far as Kevin could take it. I'm sure those things made it in Flex, and maybe that's where I would have seen it. But yeah, I've seen some pictures posted where I'm like, oh, I bet Dorian wasn't too happy about that setup. So I don't think everybody could escape like the shiny habit, you know, like Dorian smiling, like that would be weird. Like,
well, do you think so? I've always thought that Dorian was kind of, maybe he was just representative of a change in mentality, but the mentality of bodybuilding and bodybuilders before Dorian and after Dorian was very different. Now it's that stupid ass grind mentality where everybody treats lifting like it's something they don't want to do. And do you think that that's, can we lay that at Dorian's feet? Is that his fault, or is that something that happened that was unrelated to him? It seemed like him because he was the one who was like, bring your lunch pail. This shit sucks.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't know. I never really thought about it in those terms, you know. I mean, when do you stop loving it? I mean, at that level, is it possible to love it at that level? I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask a top person.
You make a good
woman.
point. Yeah.
It might be impossible because of what they have to put themselves through. I think it's easier to love it when you never step on stage, to be honest with you.
But I think that mentality trickled down and made everybody else think that this is all intended to be miserable. And they also got it backwards where it's about the end of the journey and not the journey itself. It's not about the workout every day. It's what program are you on? And it's like, I don't have a fucking program.
Yeah.
I can
to speak to your point, Jamie, the way that Butler presented bodybuilding was that it was this fun lifestyle, and Arnold was this happy-go-lucky guy that was joking around with all of the other really good friends. Dorian, in his presentation, never talked to anybody. He was a silent shadow. Even Lee Haney, to an extent, they were all fun and having laughs. California by the beach, and then it just seemed to be this tonal shift when Dorian came along. So it became all blood and guts, very industrial,
and the gender divide too. Men and women not in the same photo.
Yes, yeah, good point. They just started featuring the bodybuilders minus the women on the covers, yeah, to make it hardcore. It's 60 years of the Olympia this year, Brian. I think that Joe Weider's legacy has probably not been as enduring as he hoped, and he's all but been forgotten by the modern age of these new breed of kids coming up. You probably had a lot of contact. I remember there was an excellent picture I saw of you taking backstage with Joe doing a front double biceps in his suit, and it was just so nice because it was like one of those off-the-cuff shots that showed just how much he loved bodybuilding. And I think he, for all the criticism leveled against him, he seemed like his heart was always in the right place. And looking back, he seemed like he was pretty much very generous to a lot of the guys. But what was your thoughts on Joe?
Oh, I can't say anything bad about Joe. He was great to me. He was great to Gladys. I really enjoyed him. He obviously, if he allowed me to do those shoots, which of course he's paying for it, but really with Alan Dalphin was like the CEO. When I was negotiating Gladys's contract, it was sitting across from Alan, not Joe. They used to say back in those days that, you know, Joe, and to your point, Joe, I believe, I don't know this, I never asked Joe this, but I really believe Joe loved bodybuilding. And I do think he really did love the guys, even though I'm sure he didn't treat everybody maybe the way they wanted to be treated. But you could just see it. Like he couldn't help. The Ernie shoot, for instance, that started at the Night of Champs. I have pictures downstairs with Ernie and Joe. And Joe, if a bodybuilder's standing in front of Joe, he was seated. Joe has to show him like, no, elbow up. Like he just loved saying, no, this is how you do it. He loved it. And I have pictures of that. And that shot that you're talking about, that was backstage at the Olympia at Mandalay Bay. And I don't even know why I thought of it, but there he was. And I said, hey, Joe, hit a shot. And he hit a front double bicep with a childlike grin. And I love that photo. And when he passed, Vince Scalisi asked if they could use that in some of whatever they did, you know, to sort of honor Joe. I was like, my God, yeah, because it really, you could feel it. And I think he almost felt happy to be acknowledged in that way. And he also hit a side chest too. Pretty great. In his suit, in his fancy suit. It's pretty great.
Yeah. You mentioned you don't have much kind of affiliation with the sport, or even you take too much notice of it. But what are your thoughts on perhaps the current state of bodybuilding, particularly in regards to athletes' health? Like I said, you have many people dying each week. Last week, I think there was 2 or 3, and just other people, but it's also the women now.
There were 2 or 3 last week.
Yeah.
Wow.
And these are names. These are guys with names and girls with names, let alone the people that aren't big names that are just dying as well.
Yeah, I just can't speak to it because I don't know anything about it. I mean, I think it's unfair for us to assume anything. I mean, you'd have to see some, you know, tests or post-mortem. I don't know. I mean, it does seem like a lot of young people are dying, but I think I'd be a fool to try to weigh in on that one. I just don't know in terms of, you know, the state of sport. I mean, that doesn't define our sport. I think the sport has issues in its own without that. But yeah, I have to bail on that one. I think it'd be foolish. I don't know.
Well, so maybe you can give us a little insight then, because we didn't have well, at least I didn't grow up having a program that I followed. Like we would kind of have a split or something, like what day, the days of the week you train different stuff. Were you kind of like that?
Yeah, that's all we did. We basically did split routines. We hit, and again, I'm not a big bodybuilder, but this is what everybody, to your point, is kind of like that's what people were doing. I'm sure we got it out of the magazines. And like I said before, our equipment wasn't exotic and our workouts sure as fuck weren't exotic.
Well, you've got your book, so share a workout with us, because I'm sure everybody wants to hear, like, can you tell just, you don't have to tell us what weights you did, but how many exercises were you doing per body part? How many body parts per, like each time a week? You know what I mean? What were you doing?
Well, I do know we were, I printed out. We always did split routines. I think we used to do like chest, triceps, back biceps, and, you know, legs, calves. It was pretty basic stuff, as I'll read out to you. Just off the top. This is kind of from this book. This is 82, 83. Bench press, incline press, dips. We all love dips, still love dips. Push downs, squats, leg extension, leg curls on one piece of equipment. We remember, like, we didn't have it dedicated. We got on our stomachs or we sat there.
Yep.
I remember, like, the first time I saw a dedicated leg curl, like a standing leg curl, I was like, what the fuck? What is that madness? We didn't know that. You know, you just laid down and did your leg curls. Seated calf raise. We used to do toe presses off vertical leg press, which I think is an underappreciated piece of equipment.
Well, you can buy a vertical leg press now. It's just 3.5 stories tall, and you have to hire like a heavy truck to pull it into your gym.
Yeah, I bet. They were simple ones. I mean, you can still find Jubenvilles, and you can find some old ones out there. They exist, but you've got to load them up, obviously.
I didn't know Ed Jubenville had his own workout equipment.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Jubenville equipment? You know how many bodies were built on Jubenville? I don't.
I just knew of him as a guest poser. Like, I saw him mentioned over and over, and Mr. America reports as a guest poser.
No, he was out of Massachusetts, and it's collectible. It's not just equipment; it's collectible. Yeah, really cool ad. His ad was famous because he had an elephant standing on one of his benches. I had a whole bunch until I sold it all, but I mean, you can find it out there. Just go on, you know, Facebook Marketplace and look long enough. Sometimes people don't know it's Jubenville, but, you know, you can recognize the mahogany sort of like reddish color on the upholstery and black equipment, and that's Jubenville, probably like late 70s. early 80s.
Oh, all right. We had that in our high school, actually. That's awesome. All right. Yeah. Hey, that shit was indestructible.
Pull downs, chins, hypers, behind the neck press, laterals, upright rows, shrugs, dumbbell curls, barbell curls. Started deadlifts a little later. We didn't do deadlifts early on because there wasn't usually enough space in the gym for deadlift. Kind of have to plan for them. And again, in a small space, couldn't really isolate, like, 6 foot bar, a couple feet on each side. So that came later. And I'll have you know, I never did a hip thrust in my whole fucking life.
Me neither.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, Brian, being the creative type, you probably still have a lot of concepts, running through your head of things that you could probably do with today's bodybuilders or things that you just never got the chance to do. Do you ever look at any of the guys from today or girls from today's scene and sort of think, oh, I'd love to shoot them in this particular concept shoot? Or no, you don't, your mind doesn't go there anymore?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, any one of them I'd like to shoot like Animal Pack, like hardcore, like Chris Bumstead would be amazing in a hardcore gym. Nick Walker, I mean, all those guys. And to that end, because Animal, and I don't shoot for Animal Pack anymore, but to that end, Animal Pack sort of pivoted a few years ago, kind of away, obviously, from what I was doing. And, I was able to do it, but it wasn't like what I was doing before. I still love what I did before. I'll always love shooting that. And I had reached out to Sean Clarita, who's a Jersey guy. And he was actually an animal guy a million years ago when he was like a young man. And I said to him, I said, Sean, like, I found this amazing gym, like time warp gym. Like it's a key, a key gym. You ever hear that term, a key gym, where it was like a key club. And I got permission to go in there and shoot there. And just on my own dime, just because I wanted to shoot, to what you're saying, today's guy, like that. And we just had a beautiful shoot. I mean, he was thrilled because he always sort of dreamed about shooting that. So yeah, every time I see these new guys, I think, man, I would love to shoot that guy. Like black and white.
I'm sure they'd be open to it,
Yeah, but do they pay? Like, I love it, but I can't do shit for free. Maybe they would, I don't know. And maybe it doesn't fit with their marketing plans, who knows? But it just seems like everybody's pretty comfortable in their own big boxes, and that's where they're shooting all their content. And, I think it all looks alike.
Yeah, and what I was alluding to earlier about when I try to make the thumbnails for some of the modern day bodybuilding topics that I talk about, it's so hard to find good images of any of the guys. Whereas if I was to go back in the archives of the older guys, so easy to find these iconic images. But just my last question to Brian, Jamie might have a couple more, or if the audience has a few, please shoot them to just before we finish up with Brian, because he's been very, very generous with his time. But, there's a lot of criticism against modern day bodybuilding. But can you identify like maybe some positives that you identify about the new era or scene that, still gives hope for this sport moving forward?
Again, I'm on the outside looking in. I look at a guy like Chris Bumstead and I think, wow, that's pretty fucking beautiful, man, that kind of physique. But I also like, a brute like Nick Walker. He's just sort of like badass, looks like an animal. So I think there's room for all those types of bodies and guys. And I think, I don't think there's any such thing as like a bad bodybuilder. Maybe they don't win. But for me, as an artist and a photographer, I'd be open to any of that stuff. I think for different reasons, they would look different, photograph different. And, I would love to shoot some of these guys, do something cool. And even when you mentioned about concept shoots, I do think sometimes about that, like, man, I'd love to dream up something really crazy. But again, who pays for that? Like, the only people with money these days, obviously, are supplement companies. And I don't know, they're doing so well without those things. It's like when you do well, kind of despite yourself, what's your motivation to try to do something different or spend that much more money? Is it that different? I can't answer that, but my God, they look like they're doing amazing. None of them are legacy companies. They've not been around for more than 10 years. I don't know. It's incredible. The growth of some of these young companies blows my mind. So they really obviously know what they're doing. The products must be great. I don't think the promotion isn't necessarily great. I don't think the imagery is necessarily great. I think most of them fail with product photography. Like I could, and I have just personally, like I screen cap things from all these companies and I critique it myself. I'm like, oh my God, that's out of focus. Because I probably shot more cans than anybody on this planet in 22 years with Animal Pack. And I always felt, even with Animal Pack, like the products were never given the respect that they deserved. At least that's how I experienced it. What would happen with me early on was I would be shooting Frank McGrath, Evan Centopani, and then they would say, okay, when we're done with the guys or the guy, we need to shoot these cans because we have a new product and we need to do a family shot, whatever it is. And mind you, that's at the end of a really long day. And I think I still did a good job with it, but I remember lobbying them and saying, look, these should be dedicated days. It's your product. The cans should look amazing. Now, it's up to the photographer or whoever to figure what that's to look like. But for Animal, I knew what it should look like. It wasn't like on a studio with like perfectly lit. It was in the gym. And you see my old pictures, the cans are in a gym bag or on the floor, or they're in with a bunch of handles for push downs. And so I've shot a lot, and I look at what's being done at some of these product shots, and I think they're really poor. They could be much, much better. I thought, oh, I should consult on that. But they're doing well. So what's my argument? How can I make my argument stick? It doesn't make sense. They're kicking ass. So maybe they don't need it. Things have changed, and it's fine.
Yeah, it's so strange. It's so strange that the early first movers, early established brands like Weider, Twin Lab, EAS, none of them exist anymore in any form or shape. And it's just funny how, like you said, these new companies who do everything wrong and despite themselves manage to be a little bit more representative of the market these days. Do you have any photography books available? Somebody's asked in the comments.
No, I do not. That ship has sailed for me. There was a moment where I had an agent and, do a book. I got nibbles, but the terms were terrible. And, then the digital era kind of came upon us. And I just realized, it's sort of, I think if you do a book, it's more of a vanity project. I would love to have a book, of course, and then you get a Library of Congress number and you're known forever. But I also think there's ego there. And honestly, I don't have the passion to chase that anymore. And, more people can see one photo that gets passed around digitally than are ever going to buy a book. So, like I say, I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah. Probably just a springboard of this question from Richard as well. Is there any old Gold's Gyms photos that haven't been seen to date, or even like some of your own archives? Do you think you'll ever delve back into them and release a few more photos that people maybe haven't seen?
I never shot at Gold's. I was pure East Coast. Everything was based around East Coast. Yeah, never shot at Gold's. Gladys shot at Gold's, but that was obviously later on. But that was not, I didn't pick up a camera, obviously when Gladys was there. That was after. So no, nothing new on Gold's. Not for me anyway.
Yeah. Any other questions for myself, Jamie, for Brian before we let him go?
I do. So of all of the crazy, amazing, cool things about you, I think my favorite mashup of two disparate things is you put on muscle operas. So what you were talking about, a hardcore gym, and I think people have a very different idea of what hardcore means to you than what it means when they think of some gym that's blasting death metal and it's a bunch of dudes all dressed in black, yelling and punching each other in the chest.
Yeah, hardcore to me just means you're serious about weightlifting. That's all. Be serious, right. Train hard. That's it. It doesn't mean you can't laugh. It doesn't mean you can't speak between sets. We all did. I mean, I think maybe the one thing that I would put out there, and I don't want to be like the 67-year-old guy telling the young kids, oh, you should do this. I mean, God bless everybody. Let them do what they want. You know, like my saying is, you know, the saying like live and let live. My saying is lift and let lift. I don't give a shit what anybody does. It's all okay. Let them lift, let them enjoy it. But I will say, as the 67-year-old guy, that what I think they're missing is the community and the camaraderie that we had in the 80s was like no other. Like, I am still friends with my training partner from 1982. So a kid today ask themselves, number one, do they have a training partner? Or is their training partner their tripod? Probably. So if they have a training partner, will they be friends with that training partner in 42 years? I don't know if that's going to happen again. I don't know. Maybe it's small gyms in middle America somewhere that can happen. But man, we were tight. We were like a family. If something had to be done in the gym, whatever it was, you would have people lining up to help you if you needed something done. New equipment, oh, let's bring it in. Put down flooring, yeah, let's bring the flooring. It was just so special for all of us, like, and we all felt it. And mind you, these are not all bodybuilders. These are women that for the first time touching a weight was walking into better bodies. But they were as serious as bodybuilders. And we just really, it was so beautiful. And I just feel like maybe today's young lifters are missing out on that they should really focus maybe on these human connections. Because truth be told, the human connections will live way longer than a dumbass trophy. And I once had a woman, a very early member of Better Bodies, and I thought she put it really beautifully. It was in some thread in my Facebook group for Better Bodies. She said, I no longer have the body that I had at Better Bodies, but I have the friends. And I thought, yes, that's it. So yeah, that'd be the one thing that I would say sitting here as the old guy, like, man, like make friends in the gym. The gym, it was just so special for us. We loved it and we loved the people. And I don't know that I see that today. It doesn't seem, and I could be wrong. People comment like, I don't know that people have training partners that we used to have training partners. Like I say, for years, you had a training partner. And it's very much like, you know, the days of Arnold, those guys, like you seeing Bill Grant and those guys and everybody hanging out. I mean, that was LA. You know, we were doing that in New York in the early 80s. I'm sure it was being done in other places as well. But it's the community that it looks like it's lacking. It seems like the whole sport feels very fragmented. Like it doesn't, it's no longer like this. Because everybody kind of exists in their own little ecosystem. Their broadcast studio, audio, product, everything is sort of right here, and they don't need to sort of open themselves up. And they're successful at it. I'm not knocking it. And maybe if I were 27 today, I'd be doing the same thing. But when I look at it, it feels like they're just sort of alone out there. I mean, yes, they have people, but they're on the team. So there's maybe a videographer, and there's this. It's become like a broadcast sport, so to speak, like broadcast bodybuilding, broadcast weightlifting. And, you know, I don't think by its nature, weight training is performative. It isn't for broadcasting. Like,
Thank you. Thank you.
The performance part is on the stage. But now with social media and algorithms and driving likes, people aren't just training, they're just doing silly stuff. Like, again, I don't care. People can do what they want. That's fine. But I say I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I would never do that because it serves no purpose other than for Instagram. And you have to ask yourself that, like, am I doing this for Instagram or am I doing it for myself? And so there it loses a little authenticity. I guess it gains viewership and that means money. So again, I'm not knocking what people do. I never would. It's their lives. I mean, it doesn't affect me, doesn't hurt me in any way. But I don't get all that stuff. Like this performance. It's not a performance. Weightlifting is not a performance. You just do it. And then you get on stage and you perform. Or if you're a power lifter, you perform by doing your lift or an Olympic lift or whatever. But it's that aspect that sort of alienates me. Like I think sometimes, man, what if I owned a gym? Like, how would I deal with all this like shooting? And I think, I mean, I'd love to. I think some guys are, or maybe women gym owners are brave enough to not allow phones. I don't know that you could do that. But I think that if I did, my rule would probably be no tripods, because tripods are just dumb, dangerous, in the way. And you know, you've seen, you know, Joey Swole, like people are feeling so entitled now about this broadcast, about this, you know, shooting, self-shooting. Somebody gets in their way, like what?
Yeah, no shooting rules are becoming more and more a thing down here in gyms. So you can't bring your tripod or your camera on the floor anymore in terms of taking pictures.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're not, if you walk in front of somebody filming themselves, you're not getting in their way. You're in a gym training. You have to either live with that or just don't do it. So, yeah, and again, that's been pointed out, you know, by Joey beautifully a million times. But it just shows you how some of these young people are feeling really fucking entitled on the gym floor. It's like, nope. So yeah, I'd probably say no tripods, at least.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I totally agree. Any other questions, Jamie, before we let Brian go?
Can you, so I read the little blurbs and everything, but can you just, I know I'm pushing this, but I want to know what the fuck a muscle opera is. Like, so you guys were doing operas?
No. It's just a term. It's how we refer to the show. So it goes back to me saying how all of these sort of like outliers of outliers came into my gym. Graffiti artists, DJs, writers, poets, bodybuilders. I mean, like you had said, anybody passing through New York would come in. Lee Haney, I've got pictures with everybody. But we did not have, living in New York City, a lot of pro bodybuilders. John Torelli moved to New York. He trained at my gym for a minute. So he was one of those guys, but we didn't have it. We had great, John Natashak, he became pro later. He was a Jersey guy. We had really great amateurs, but we didn't have a ton of pros. And Gladys, we had some great women. So two of the people that were very early members of mine, Johnny Dynell and Chichi Valente, they're basically like New York City nightlife. Johnny was a legendary DJ, and Chichi was an amazing writer and producer. And they were members. They lived a block away in a loft, and everybody was smitten with a fit body back then. Women with muscle, men with muscle, because it was still new. I mean, remember in LA, people probably were used to seeing that on Muscle Beach earlier. In 82, You didn't see a whole lot of fit people walking down the streets in New York. You just didn't. It was like we were weird. I mean, we embraced the weirdness. We didn't want to be normal. I mean, I remember I took the subway back and forth to home, and me and my training partner, and we literally, tiny stringer tank tops, little short shorts, because that's all there were, our sneakers, and I used to carry like a Zero Halliburton briefcase, you know, because that was the business side of me. And like, I mean, we were just shameless about our muscles. I mean, absolutely shameless, but we kind of enjoyed that. And people were like, oh my gosh. And so to that end, Chi-Chi and Johnny suggested we should do theatrical shows with all these amazing bodies. We had Carla Dunlap, who was Jersey at the time, Gladys. I sometimes brought in people, Claire Furr, Mario Celine, or I would do it around a show. So I know the women would be in town. Mike Christian was in town once for Night of Champs, so he did it. John Torelli did it as well. And Chi-Chi would just stage these incredible shows. And one of them was referred to as Muscle Opera. There was a series of them. Maybe we did 4 or 5 of them. And we did them at all like the hottest nightclubs in New York, Studio 54, Pyramid Club, Limelight. And Johnny would do the music.
Wait, that's the year that Dolph is running around with Grace Jones at Studio 54, right? Like,
well, you know, it's a funny story about him. He says he met Grace somewhere else. My training partner, who's like the Rain Man of Better Bodies, he doesn't forget anything. He said that his name was Hans, I think. Dolph was working the door at a nightclub that opened up underneath Better Bodies called Private Eyes. He said that he met her when she was walking into Better Bodies. She trained at Better Bodies a few times. And he came
nice.
in twice too. So I don't know the real story there. My friend Benny said no, he met her when she was coming to Better Bodies. But I heard him speak about it somewhere and it was a different story. So I don't know.
But this is wild. So you're a Studio 54 club guy too. Like you just lived your life, man. God damn.
Well, I mean, we were strange and curious to all of these people. And mind you that, when you own a gym, bouncers need a place to train. There's a really famous club like 3 buildings away called Danceteria, which was like the first place that really showcased punk. I remember they had a woman running the elevator with a mohawk, which was pretty radical back then. And their guys would, train at my gym. And of course, it's reciprocal. So you could go into clubs, and Chi-Chi actually was a bartender there. So, but they had access beyond me, and they would get us access to all these clubs. And we just put on these amazing shows. When I look at the videos, they're on my YouTube channel. I have more. I hope to post more soon. But I still get chills when you see how they were staged, the music, the posing. And again, it shows them differently. You watch Carla Dunlap pose. It's mind-blowing. Watch Gladys pose. Mind-blowing. It's so, so beautiful. Today, this day, 40 years later, it's just incredible. So that's what they were. They were just spectacles, like muscle spectacles. That's awesome. And, I don't think people have said, oh, do it. I don't think you could do it again. Because one thing, when I look back at those videos and I look back at photos, I not only look at, the talent, I look at the audience. And remember, so it's the early 80s. This is really new. There was a sense of wonder in everybody's eyes, especially the women. Like Gladys, I mean, she mesmerized, all the women mesmerized people. And so that sense of wonder is just, it's gone. We have seen everything because of the internet. We've literally seen everything. And if we haven't seen it, we Google it, somebody has seen it, and they've posted a fucking video. So it's just a different world now. But back then, you could make people like jaws drop. That's hard to do to New Yorkers, but that's what it was like. But there's no going home, is there? I'm lucky and happy to have been a part of that and witnessed it. It was really special. And I don't think we knew we were making history. I maintain like you never really know when you're making history. Only time will tell you if it's historical. We knew it was fun. We knew we were different. And obviously I always believed in women in weights because I wouldn't have sort of like gotten behind it that way. I knew it was needed. Obviously that turned out to be true. But yeah, I'm just thankful.
Well, awesome. We're really thankful for your time as well and generosity in coming on and having this discussion with us today. And as people have said in the comments, they really value your contribution. Not only have you been on the vanguard of all this and seen it come down the pike and created the history, but you've been a contributor to that in the way that you are a visionary, like I said, a creative force, and you've given us memories that'll always stand the test of time and be enduring long after we've all gone, So again, it's just been a tremendous honor to have you on today, Brian. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jamie, but if you were to even release a book where you just narrated it into a microphone, it would be so fascinating to hear the voluminous amount of stories you probably have only just touched on here today, because I think you've got so much to tell, and that's why we love dipping back into these stories.
Yeah, somebody has asked in a thing about like a documentary and so on, the footage. Maybe I tried to. I think I started a YouTube channel 13 years ago, uploaded 3 videos and never touched it since. Then I thought, I need to like get back to it. So I actually have digitized some of the VHSs. So I hope to maybe breathe a little life into the YouTube. And, you know, they're asking about quality. No, it was VHS. And to me, there's something beautiful about lo-fi. And, you know, remember, there was a moment where there wasn't even VHS, and my first video camera was like full-size VHS, you know, carrying, not like a broadcast camera. They were big cameras. They were lunks.
They were heavy. They were heavy.
Yeah, they were awkward. Then came VHS compact, which was a little easier. So yes, stuff exists. And yeah, in a documentary, if you're showing something from 1983, it's going to look like 1983, and it should. It would be weird if it were like, you know, high def, because it didn't exist, number one. But so, you know, maybe somehow on YouTube I will get whatever I do have. It's not a ton of stuff, but I have digitized everything that I can find. So there's a couple of trips of me and Gladys out to California, which are pretty cool. Going to World's Gym, meeting Arnold, although he told me to turn off the camera. But Danny, Frank Zane, you know, everybody was there. So I've got some cool stuff. I mean, it's not hours of stuff, whatever. It's short, but it's pretty cool. But when I can focus, no pun intended, I hope to maybe get that on my channel sometime.
That pun was very much intended.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it was. Not really.
It's been a fantastic chat for me, and I would love to have you back on again sometime if you're willing to come on down the track. If you have anything new to ever offer or talk about, you're a welcome guest anytime. So thanks very much again, Brian. Thanks.
Do you have anything to plug, Brian?
Not really. I mean, I think I mentioned I am working on a documentary. I can't speak too much about it, but I will. I've been working the last 2 years on it, and things are going really well. And I'm seeking funding at this point, and that's looking pretty good. It's a big project, but it's going to be really special. But that's sort of all I can say.
That's awesome.
That's probably.
Can't wait to see it, mate.
Yeah. I'm stoked.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. Thanks everybody for tuning as well, and for your questions as always and your support. Make sure you check out Brian's stuff on Instagram and support him where you can, where he is available on the internet. Same with Jamie as well. He's got new books.
And to Brian's point about building community, if you go to my website, or you click the link in my profile on Instagram, at the bottom it has Plague Travel. We are going to start doing bodybuilding, like community building cruises. So we're going to lift and hang out. It's just going to be, it's not seminars and shit like that. This is, let's make fucking friends and go and vacation together and have fun together. So we're doing the first one. It's just going to be a small one. Thanksgiving in the Caribbean. Just sign up and let me know if you're interested in doing something in the future, because we're planning them down the road. We're going to do a real small one at first. So.
Cool.
Sounds awesome, mate. Great. Well, thanks again both for your time, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.